You already know about the Austrian painter. You already know about Stalin. History class made sure of that. But history has a deep fault of people who were somehow just as evil, sometimes worse, and nobody even talks about them. So today, we're unlocking those names. The most evil people you've probably never heard of. Phalaris, Sicily, 570 BC. We're starting ancient, because ancient evil hits different. Phalaris was the tyrant of Agrigento in Sicily, and the man had a hobby. His hobby was having a giant bronze bull built, hollow on the inside, with a door on the side. He would put people inside the bull, lock the door, and light a fire underneath it. The bull was designed so that the screams of the person inside would come out of the bull's mouth, sounding like the bull was actually making noise. He would then sit and listen to this as entertainment. He reportedly tried this out on a man who built it first, which is honestly the one time in his life he did something almost reasonable. Phalaris was eventually overthrown by his own people, who then put him in his own bull. As endings go, that one was pretty satisfying. Lavrentiy Beria, Soviet Union, 1938 until 1943. Most people know Stalin was terrifying. Fewer people know about the man Stalin himself was reportedly terrified of. Lavrentiy Beria was the head of the Soviet secret police, and he was one of the most powerful and most dangerous men in the Soviet Union for 15 years. He ran the gulags. He signed off on mass executions. He personally oversaw the torture of political prisoners. Stalin kept him close because he was useful, and kept his distance because he was horrifying. When Stalin died in 1953, Beria immediately started making political moves to take over the entire Soviet Union. The other Soviet leaders panicked, arrested him, gave him a 2-hour trail, and shot him on the same day. Even his enemies were afraid of what would happen if they gave him too long to think. Pietro Caruso, Rome, 1944. Caruso was the police chief of Rome during the Nazi occupation of Italy, and he took the job with an enthusiasm that horrified even people who were used to horror. When the Nazis needed 335 people to be executed as a reprisal for a partisan attack, he didn't just comply. He personally went out of his way to find extra victims to fill the quota. He pulled people out of prisons who hadn't even been charged with anything, just to make the numbers work. 335 people were shot in the cave outside of Rome in a single afternoon. After the war ended, Caruso was captured, tried, and executed. When they took him in to be shot, the crowd was so angry that the guards had to physically protect him just so he could make it to his own execution. Bleda the Hun Empire, 400 AD. You've heard of Attila the Hun. Almost nobody talks about his brother Bleda, who co-ruled the Hun Empire alongside Attila for over a decade. Bleda was by all accounts a genuinely terrifying ruler in his own right, brutal, violent, and completely unpredictable. He kept a Moorish dwarf as a combination pet, and a court jester who he dressed in armor and brought to battles, which tells you a lot about the man's personality. He and Attila ruled together and terrorized half of Europe between them. Then one day, Bleda mysteriously died in a hunting accident. Historians generally agree that the hunting accident was Attila. So to recap, Bleda was so evil that Attila the Hun, one of the most feared conquerors in human history, looked at him and thought he was too much. Tomás de Torquemada, Spain, 1483 to 1498. Torquemada was a Grand Inquisitor of Spain during the Spanish Inquisition, and if you know anything about the Spanish Inquisition, you already know that's not a good job title. Under his leadership, the Inquisitions prosecuted thousands of people for heresy. The methods used to extract confessions included things that are genuinely too unpleasant to describe in detail, but involved a lot of creative use of ropes and water and fire. He personally approved the burning of around 2,000 people. He was so hated that he traveled everywhere with a personal bodyguard of 250 armed soldiers and 50 horsemen, because the number of people who wanted him dead was that high. Ilse Koch, Nazi Germany, 1937 to 1945. We end with Ilse Koch, who was the wife of the commandant of Buchenwald concentration camp and who became known as the Witch of Buchenwald. Her reputation among survivors and investigators was so severe that even hardened American soldiers who had seen the worst of war were reportedly shaken by the testimony against her. She was convicted of war crimes, sentenced to life imprisonment, and died in prison in 1967. She is one of the very few people in this list who actually faced meaningful justice, and even that felt insufficient to the people who survived what happened at Buchenwald. History has a way of remembering the famous monsters and forgetting the ones who operated just underneath that level of notoriety. But they were there, and they were real, and honestly the vault has plenty more where those came from. If you want more stories unlocked, drop a like and subscribe to the Lore Vault. because we're here every single week. See you in the next one.